Ridgely kids and families. It's so good to see you all on this Holy Week. I was remembering our Holy Weeks of the last few years. I've been looking at pictures that have popped up on Facebook memories of some of you getting baptized and making your confessions of faith and our palm waving, and I've really missed you all a lot when I've been thinking about it. I was thinking about particularly 2 years ago on Lent, I was preaching and I mentioned in my sermon about when Jesus died. And I don't know if you remember this, but when I mentioned it, one of you, our sweet, fabulous, amazing kids who just started coming to church, stood up from the playground and said, "Wait, he dies?" You see, you had never heard that part of the story. And it's a really powerful part of the story, right? But sometimes we don't tell you all, the harder parts of Jesus' story or of Jesus' life. We tell you about Palm Sunday when we waved the palms and celebrated Jesus, and we tell you about Easter when he came back to life, and we tell you all about his miracles he worked and the ways he loved us and the ways he fed people. But sometimes adults don't tell you about the harder parts of Jesus' story, or even the harder parts of our world, because adults don't think you can handle it, or maybe you're not ready for it. But here's the thing. I know you all, and I know you can do really hard things because you're brave and you're strong and you're compassionate, and because you've been there, right? Hard things have happened in your life. People you really love and your animals you love, they've died. And sometimes your friends have hurt you or been mean to you. Or sometimes you've been sick, or the people you love have been sick, or even right now, right? You're doing a really hard thing. You're having to stay inside and you're not getting to see your friends or your family members. And some of you are worried about people you know who are sick, or you hear your parents talking about what's happening outside with this virus, and you're anxious and you're scared. And I thought it might be helpful for you today to know that Jesus has been there too. Jesus has had times when he's anxious and scared, and Jesus has had times when his friends have hurt him and betrayed him, and Jesus has been there. Jesus has been afraid and mad and scared. And so when you're afraid and mad and scared, I thought it might help you to know that Jesus has been there. So today, I thought we'd tell some of the stories from our Bible. This is our Spark Story House Bible, a journey through God's Word. Remember, the Bible is the story that tells us all about God's love. I thought we might could tell each other some of the stories from our Bible about Jesus' last days to help us remember that Jesus has been there and Jesus knows what it's like to hurt, and also how God transformed that hurt. So here's the story. The first story I'm going to tell you is the story of the Last Supper. It's the story we remember on Maundy, Thursday. That's today. This story you'll get to see. You can see the picture. This is the picture of Jesus washing his disciples' feet. Let me tell you that story. This is about the last dinner Jesus had with his friends before he died. It said, Jesus knew that the time had come for him to leave this world. He wanted to share his last Passover meal together with his 12 closest friends. Do you miss having dinner with your friends? I do. Jesus loved his friends and wanted them to show his love in a very caring way. As his friends got ready for the meal, Jesus put water in a large bowl and knelt down on the floor. He wanted to wash the feet of each disciple. When it was Peter's turn, Peter said, "You will never wash my feet." Jesus replied, "Peter, you don't understand what I'm doing, but you will later." Peter loved Jesus so much that he said, "Then don't just wash my feet, but my head and my hands also." Peter wanted to be as close to Jesus as possible. Do you have times like that, where you just want to get as close to God and as Jesus as possible? After dinner, they had a supper. Here's the picture of that. As they were eating, Jesus sadly told his disciples, "One of you will betray me. One of you will tell people who don't like me where I am so they can take me away." This upset the disciples, and each one said, "It's not me you're talking about, is it?" When Judas said this, Jesus gently replied, "Yes, Judas, you will betray me." Have you ever done something to one of your friends or to someone you've loved to betray them, to hurt them, even if you didn't mean to? I know I have. Even Jesus' closest disciples did. Then Jesus picked up a loaf of bread. He blessed it and he gave it to each of his friends, saying, "Take this bread and eat it. This is my body." Then Jesus picked up a cup. He gave thanks and said, "Drink this. It's my blood, which I must give up. It's poured out for the forgiveness of all people." Each time we take communion in church on Sundays, this is the meal we remember. After dinner, they went to pray. Here's a picture of them out praying in the garden. When the meal was over, Jesus and his friends went to a place called the Mount of Olives. Jesus said sadly, "Soon you will all leave me." Peter felt bad. "Even if all the others leave you, Jesus, I won't," he said. Jesus looked at his dear friend and said, "Before the sun rises, you will pretend you don't know me 3 times. Peter said, "Jesus, I love you too much to ever do that." All of the other disciples said the same thing. They couldn't keep their promise. Here's a picture of them asleep when Jesus needed them most. Jesus had a good friend named Peter. Peter was there when Jesus healed people and made miracles happen. Jesus liked Peter so much, he gave Peter the nickname the Rock. Jesus had another friend named Judas. We heard about him, right? Jesus, Peter, and Judas and all the disciples spent lots of time together. They were all together when Jesus told them his life had to end. It was a really sad and hard time for Jesus and his friends. Jesus felt so sad, he went to a quiet place in a garden and prayed. "Please, God," Jesus prayed, "make me strong. Help me to trust you." Jesus asked the disciples to come to the garden and stay awake while he prayed, but they fell asleep. This is what happened when they fell asleep. You'll see what happens next. "Wake up, wake up, wake up," Jesus said to the disciples. When Jesus finished praying, it was time for them to go and face hard things. Even though Jesus had many friends, he had some enemies too. Some people were scared that Jesus would change the world too much with his love. Judas got scared too. He let Jesus down. Judas told some of Jesus' enemies where Jesus was. When soldiers came to the garden, Judas kissed Jesus on the cheek to show them who they were looking for. The soldiers took Jesus away. The disciples ran away and hid. They were so scared. Later, Peter waited outside the place where Jesus was on trial. A girl saw Peter and said, "He's a friend of Jesus. He's trouble too." Peter wanted to help his friend Jesus, but he was scared, so he pretended he didn't know him. "I don't know him. I don't know him. I don't know him," Peter said. He lied. His lie made him feel worse inside. Peter ran away. He cried and cried. He felt so sad for Jesus, and he felt very, very sorry. But Jesus knew that Peter loved him. Jesus knew Peter was his friend. That's why he'd given Jesus a special job to be the rock of the church. Afterwards, he told many people about his best friend Jesus. "I know him, I know him, I know him." Peter told everyone. That was the truth. He finally told the truth. But still, Jesus had to die. Here's the story of that day. It was a very sad day when Jesus died. The soldiers who had arrested Jesus teased him for pretending to be a king. They took his clothes and put a king's purple cloak on him. They made a crown of vines with sharp thorns and put it on Jesus' head. Ouch! The soldiers made Jesus carry a heavy wooden cross. The cross was too heavy for him. Jesus fell and skinned his knee, and the cross tumbled to the ground. A man in the crowd carried the cross the rest of the way for Jesus. The soldiers nailed Jesus' hands and feet to the cross. They raised Jesus' cross up on a hill between two other men. The other men were thieves, and they were being crucified too. That means killed. One of the men was angry with Jesus. "If you're a powerful king, can't you save yourself? Why don't you save us too?" The man spat on Jesus. But the other thief believed in Jesus. He shouted back, "Don't you know who this is? This is God's son. He hasn't done anything wrong. We are being punished for our mistakes, but Jesus shouldn't be here." The man turned to Jesus and asked, "Will you take me to heaven with you?" Jesus looked at the man and loved him. Jesus said, "Yes, today we will be in heaven together." After a while, the world grew very dark, as if a terrible thunderstorm was coming. It was as if all creation was crying because Jesus was about to die. Jesus was feeling all alone and prayed to see if God was still there. Of course, God never left Jesus. God was with him the whole time. God's always with us too when we are struggling and when life is hard. Jesus looked at the crowd. He was so sad that people didn't believe that he was God's son. He asked God to forgive all of them for killing him. Finally, Jesus had fought long enough. He said, "God, the work you gave me here to do is finished." He breathed a final, long, slow breath. Then Jesus died. Today, we're going to get a time to remember what it was like when Jesus died. You can join with your family on that Maundy, Thursday worship tonight at 6 o'clock. You can watch it while you're eating dinner to remember that Last Supper Jesus spent with his friends. And then starting tonight all the way through tomorrow, we're going to pray. You and your family are invited to spend an hour praying together. Maybe during that hour, you could draw a picture of the day Jesus died. I wonder what color you might use to show sadness. You could write a letter to Jesus, praying with him. You could pray for all people in our world who struggle and die today. Then on Sunday, we're going to find out a surprise. Some of Jesus's friends went to the tomb where his body had been buried, and they found an amazing surprise. Come back and join us on Easter, friends, for a great surprise as we see what happened on Easter morning. I love you all so much, and God loves you so much exactly as you are. I can't wait to see the ways you share God's love this week.